All right, today we're diving deep. You want to understand this whole Raja Yoga thing, especially those concentration practices from Swami Vivekananda's commentary on the Yoga Sutras, right? Well, get ready for ancient wisdom with a surprisingly modern twist.
It really is amazing. Swami Vivekananda, in his commentary in chapter 2, lays out this super practical path to samadhi,
Samadhi sounds
like a
intense.
roadmap to this profound meditative absorption.
Whoa. Okay, so chapter 2 kicks off with something called Kriya Yoga. What's that all about? Why is it the first step?
You can think of Kriya Yoga as like the foundation. It's about building this discipline, this self-awareness through three things: tapas, svatiyaya, and ishvara pranatana.
Break those down for me. They sound kind of
Okay,
complex.
so imagine like a charioteer trying to control these powerful horses, right?
Okay.
So tapas is kind of like that. It's that discipline, that control over your mind and your body, like
Mhm.
reining in those wild horses of your senses.
Whoa, now that's a powerful image. So what about Svadhyaya? Is that just like hitting the books?
Sort of, yeah. It's about studying the scriptures, but also reflecting on yourself,
Hmm.
not to argue, not to be right, but to deepen your understanding and your conviction. Moving from just like knowing something to truly believing it.
Yeah, okay. And Ishvara Pranatana, that one sounds a bit more, well, spiritual.
Definitely. Ishvara pranatana is about surrendering the results of all your actions to like a higher power, letting go of that attachment to um, outcomes, and finding this inner peace.
So why all this emphasis on control, on discipline? What are we actually trying to, like, control here?
Great question. This is where the five kleshas come in. You can also think of them as these pain-bearing obstructions.
Okay.
Think of them as like the root cause of our suffering.
All right, so what are these kaleshas?
The first one is avidya. Basically, it's ignorance, right? It's like mistaking something temporary for something that's permanent, something impure for something that's pure, the non-self for the self.
Hmm.
It's really the root of all the other kleshas.
Now, I found it interesting that the text says that both pleasure and pain are considered obstacles here. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So it might seem a little strange, but even like good experiences can lead to suffering if we get too attached to them.
Mm.
When those experiences change or they end, which they inevitably do, we suffer. Everything changes. Nothing is permanent.
So it's not about avoiding pleasure.
Right.
It's more about understanding that it's fleeting.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
about developing this vairagya, this sense of detachment. And that's where discrimination comes in. Recognizing what's truly permanent versus what's just temporary, what's pure versus impure, the difference between the self and the non-self. And this really helps us overcome avidya.
I can see how getting caught up in those fleeting pleasures or even negative emotions can really keep us from seeing things clearly.
Yeah, exactly. We get stuck in these cycles, of craving and aversion, always searching for fulfillment outside of ourselves. And this is where the other cliches come into play.
Hold on, you mentioned five cliches, right? What are the others?
Okay, so besides avidya, there's ismita, which
Mm.
is egoism. It's identifying yourself with the ego.
Okay.
Then there's raga. That's attachment to things, experiences.
Hmm.
Dvaita is like the opposite. That's aversion, pushing away things we don't like.
Yeah.
And then lastly, there's apinavesha, which is clinging to life, this fear of death.
Whoa. Okay, it's like a whole web of
Yeah.
obstacles. You mentioned earlier this example about ducklings taking to water, right?
Right.
And that really got me thinking. It makes you wonder what's hidden in our own subconscious.
Yeah, that example perfectly illustrates samskaras, um, those subconscious impressions, from our past actions, our experiences that just shape our habits and tendencies.
Wait, so you're saying those samskaras could be from past lives? That's mind-blowing.
It's a fascinating concept, right?
Right.
Indian philosophy uses this example to support the idea of reincarnation, suggesting these tendencies come from somewhere beyond our current lives.
So if these kleshas are the root of suffering, how do we break free?
The key is weakening their grip. And we can do that through consistent practice, but also vairagya, that detachment we talked about. We could start by consciously cultivating opposing thoughts to counteract those negative emotions, like using love to overcome anger, for example.
So if I'm angry, I should just try to like think loving thoughts. Seems a bit simple.
It's not always easy, and it takes consistent effort, but the more we nurture these positive qualities, the less power negative emotions have over us, right? This is where meditation becomes a powerful tool. It helps us calm the mind and gain control over our thoughts and emotions.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned that the goal of nature is to liberate the Purusha, our true self. Can you unpack that for me? That sounds kind of paradoxical.
That's a great question. So it's rooted in Sankhya philosophy, which forms the basis of Raja Yoga. And Sankhya presents this dualistic view of Prakriti, which is nature, and Purusha, which is consciousness.
Okay, so what are Prakriti and Purusha exactly?
You can think of Prakriti as everything that we experience in the material world.
Yeah.
So our thoughts, emotions, our sensations, even our bodies. And Purusha is, it's pure consciousness, the silent observer of all of this. It's our true self beyond limitations.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get this, but how does nature help liberate, like, our true self?
It's through experience. There's this story about Indra, the king of the gods, who gets transformed into a pig. He gets so engrossed in the pig's life, indulging in all these pleasures, that he completely forgets his true divine nature. It takes the intervention of the other gods to actually help him break free.
So we're all kind of like Indra. We're caught up in the pig life, right? Chasing desires, forgetting our potential.
Precisely. We get lost in the material world and, forget our true nature as pure consciousness. But through experience and discrimination, we can awaken to our true nature, that Purusha, and achieve liberation from this cycle of suffering.
That's a powerful image. So let's get practical. How do we actually embark on this journey of self-discovery and liberation?
This is where the 8 limbs of Raja Yoga come in, also known as Ashtanga Yoga. Think of them as a step-by-step guide to achieving Samadhi.
Okay. I've heard of the 8 limbs, but can you break them down for me?
Absolutely. So they are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and finally Samadhi. Each limb builds upon the previous one, starting with these ethical foundations of Yama and Niyama.
So Yama and Niyama are all about, like, living ethically.
Yes. So Yama focuses on how we interact with the world, with these principles like nonviolence, which is ahimsa, truthfulness, that's satya, and non-stealing. Niyama is more about our personal practices, like purity, contentment, self-discipline, and surrender. These may sound simple, but they have a profound impact.
I can imagine. Actually living those principles every day is a lot harder than it sounds.
You're absolutely right. And that's where asana, pranayama, and pratyahara come in. They help us cultivate that focus, the self-awareness that we need to truly embody these ethical principles.
Okay, so let's break those 3 down. Asana is about finding a stable, comfortable posture, right? That seems familiar.
It is. But it's more than just, physical comfort. Asana creates this steady foundation for all the other limbs of yoga. It's about finding a posture that allows you to sit with stillness and awareness.
Okay. And what about pranayama? I've heard that involves, like, breath control.
Yeah, exactly. Pranayama is the practice of regulating your breath.
Yeah.
And this can calm the mind, but it can also awaken these subtle energies in the body. It's a powerful technique for cultivating focus and inner peace.
Fascinating. And what about pratyahara? That one sounds a bit more mysterious. What's that all about?
Pratyahara is basically withdrawing your senses from these external distractions and turning your attention inwards, creating this inner stillness to connect with your true nature.
So we've got the ethical foundation with yama and niyama, the physical foundation with asana, and then we, like, refine our focus and energy with pranayama and pratyahara. Seems like a really comprehensive system.
It is. And these first 5 limbs prepare us for the deeper practices of concentration, meditation, and absorption, which we'll explore next time.
Okay, so last time we were talking about those 8 limbs of Raja Yoga, right? And how the first 5 kind of set the stage for some serious mental training. So let's dive into those deeper practices, starting with dharana, which is concentration. What exactly are we trying to, like, focus on here?
With dharana, you're training your mind to just stay fixed on a single point.
Okay.
It could be like an external object, a mantra that you're repeating, or even just a mental picture. The key is picking something that really helps you quiet that constant chatter in your mind, cultivate that one-pointed focus.
So it's like shining a spotlight on one thing, and keeping it there no matter what other distractions pop up. But why is that so important?
You think about it, our minds are like wild monkeys, constantly swinging from one thought to the next.
Yeah, that's true.
Dharana is about, taming that monkey mind, gaining control. It kind of bridges that gap between the more outward practices of those first 5 limbs and those deeper states of meditation and absorption.
That makes sense. So once we've kind of gotten a handle on concentration, where do we go from there?
That's where dhyana comes in, which is meditation.
Okay.
And like, you're so captivated by a stunning sunset that you completely lose track of time.
Yeah.
That feeling of just being completely absorbed.
Right.
That's kind of akin to dhyana. It's often described as this this state of effortless flow where the mind is just fully immersed in the object of meditation.
That sounds incredibly peaceful, honestly. But to be honest, reaching that level of mental stillness just feels, well, a bit daunting.
It's important to remember that dhyana is not something you force.
Right.
It arises naturally with practice. The more you practice dharana, the more you'll experience those glimpses of dhyana. And those glimpses will just gradually lengthen and become more sustained.
So it's a gradual process. It's not like flipping a switch. Okay, that's reassuring. Now, what about samadhi? Is that like something ordinary people can even achieve?
Samadhi is the culmination of, all 8 limbs of yoga. It's a state of complete absorption where even that sense of I, like the meditator, just dissolves.
Whoa.
It's a pure consciousness, beyond all those boundaries and limitations.
Okay. I gotta ask, is this samadhi thing real? Or is it just some, like, abstract concept that's beyond our reach?
Samadhi is a real state of consciousness that countless yogis throughout history have experienced and described. It's not something you achieve overnight.
Yeah.
It takes years, maybe even lifetimes of dedicated practice. But even if we never fully reach samadhi, the journey itself is incredibly transformative.
So it's not just about the destination, right? But about the growth that happens along the way.
Exactly. The 8 limbs aren't just steps to climb.
Right.
They're practices that really enrich our lives in so many ways. Even without reaching that ultimate state of liberation, the practices of Raja Yoga can help us live with more clarity, peace, purpose.
That's a great perspective. Now, we haven't talked much about the challenges that we might face while, practicing Raja Yoga. What are some common obstacles people encounter?
I think one of the biggest hurdles is simply just finding the time and the discipline to practice consistently.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Our world is full of distractions.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy to let our practice slide. And then another common challenge is just dealing with doubt, discouragement. The path of yoga isn't always, easy, and setbacks are natural. The key is to be patient with yourself and just keep coming back to the practice, even when it feels difficult.
So resilience is key. Okay. What about those more subtle obstacles, like the kleshas we discussed earlier? How do we handle those as they come up?
That's where svadhyaya, that self-reflection, and ishvara pranatana, that surrender, becomes so important. By studying the teachings, reflecting on your experiences, and cultivating that surrender to something greater than yourself, you can gradually weaken the grip of those afflictions. It's also helpful to remember, you're not alone in this journey, right? There's this long lineage of yogis who have walked this path before, and we can draw strength and inspiration from their example.
So it's about tapping into a source of wisdom and support that's beyond just ourselves.
Yes. And ultimately, it's about recognizing that we already have everything we need within us to achieve liberation. The path of yoga is simply about, uncovering that inherent potential.
Okay. Earlier, we talked about Kriya Yoga being the foundation of practice. Can you remind me what that involves again?
Yeah. So Kriya Yoga is about developing discipline, self-awareness through tapas. That's self-discipline. Svadhyaya, which is study and self-reflection. And then ishvara pranatana, or surrender. It's like training your mind and body to become these perfect tools for the deeper practices of yoga.
That chariot analogy really stuck with me, honestly.
Yeah.
It perfectly illustrates the connection between the mind, the body, and the soul. We need to train those horses of the senses so that the charioteer, the intellect, can actually guide us towards our goal.
Exactly. And it's through the consistent practice of Kriya Yoga that we develop that strength, the clarity we need to navigate those challenges on the spiritual path. Remember we talked about vairagya, that detachment.
Yes. You mentioned that even pleasurable experiences can lead to suffering if we become attached to them.
Right. Think about your morning coffee, right?
Okay.
Can you actually enjoy it without needing it to be absolutely perfect?
Yeah.
That's vairagya in action.
Now, the text mentions Veda and Siddhanta when discussing svadhyaya. Can you shed some light on that?
Essentially, Veda refers to knowledge that's based on argument, debate.
Okay.
It's about exploring different perspectives and, challenging your assumptions. Siddhanta is more like decisive knowledge, the kind that arises from direct experience and deep contemplation. It's the kind of knowing that comes from truly embodying the teachings.
So it's about moving from intellectual understanding to actually living it.
Yes. It's about going beyond the world of concepts and theories and just directly experiencing the truth for yourself.
I love that. It kind of reminds me of that saying, knowing the path is different from walking the path.
Right.
We can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, but real understanding comes from experience.
Absolutely. And what's great about Raja Yoga is that it provides this practical roadmap for bridging that gap between knowing and being. It's about taking those teachings off the page and just making them, making them a part of your life.
You know, we've talked a lot about the practices of Raja Yoga, right?
Yeah.
But what about the benefits? How can practicing Raja Yoga actually transform our lives?
The benefits of Raja Yoga are just incredibly profound.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on a physical level, it can really improve your health and well-being.
Okay.
Mentally, it can boost your focus, your clarity, your emotional resilience. And, spiritually, it can help you connect with this deeper sense of purpose and meaning in life. Many practitioners find that it just brings them more peace, more joy, more compassion.
So it's not just about like personal transformation, but also about how we connect with the world around us.
Exactly. As you cultivate inner peace and compassion, it naturally just kind of extends outwards. It influences your relationships, how you interact with the world.
I'm definitely sensing a theme here. Raja Yoga is not just about like sitting on a mat and meditating,
Yeah.
It's about living this more conscious and fulfilling life in all aspects.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about integrating these practices into your everyday life so you can experience your full potential as a human being.
We've covered so much in this deep dive into Raja Yoga.
Yeah, we have.
From those foundational practices of Kriya Yoga to those 8 limbs that guide us towards Samadhi. But before we wrap up, I want to revisit something that really struck me. This whole idea that both pleasure and pain are considered like obstacles on the path.
Right. That's a really crucial point, and it's one that often causes a lot of confusion. It's not about denying yourself pleasure or seeking out pain. It's more about understanding that they're both just temporary states that can kind of trap us in that cycle of suffering.
Okay, so how do we actually approach pleasure and pain in a way that that helps our spiritual growth?
It goes back to cultivating viraja.
Yeah.
That, that sense of detachment that we talked about earlier is not about becoming an emotionless robot.
Right.
It's about, experiencing those pleasures and those pains, but without being completely swept away by them.
Yeah.
Recognizing that they're impermanent.
Not clinging to them.
Exactly.
Okay. That sounds, it sounds easier said than done, honestly. Our brains are kind of wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But the more you practice those tools of Raja Yoga, those ethical restraints, the observances, the postures, the breath control, withdrawal of the senses, the concentration, the meditation,
Right.
the more you actually develop that inner space of detachment.
So it's this gradual process of like refining how we relate to our experiences.
Precisely. And as you cultivate that detachment, you start to experience this much deeper level of freedom and joy, this kind of happiness that just, it doesn't depend on those external things anymore.
That sounds incredibly liberating. But it also sounds like, a lifelong journey.
It is. But even taking those first steps, on the path can have such a profound impact on your life. The practices of Raja Yoga can help you find greater peace, greater clarity, greater purpose, no matter what your age is, no matter what's happening in your life.
That's so inspiring. What's like one key takeaway you'd want to leave our listener with? They've been on this journey with us.
I would say this. Remember that the power to transform your life is already within you.
Yeah.
The teachings of Raja Yoga aren't just like some ancient wisdom.
Right.
They're a practical guide to awakening your full potential. Start small, be patient with yourself, and just enjoy the journey.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners who are ready to dive even deeper, we'll be sure to include some resources in the show notes. Keep diving deep, everyone.